Okay, we have started. So before we actually get started, I think everybody on this call, except for you, Sheila, and I'm sorry to say, we're not at conference. Anybody want to just do us one sentence what conference was for them? Just a one sentence something like what shift you might have had.
It was unbelievable.
And Donna, this is your very first one. What got you?
The love, quite frankly, the love. I mean, I didn't talk to one person that just didn't exude love and cared about what I was doing and offered to help if I needed them to. Yes, I do. It was just overwhelming. And I was really impressed with, the speeches of the NMDs and corporate. I was telling a friend, I said, I've been in a really good network marketing company called Jordan Essentials, but this really, it's as good as that, or it's a little better than that.
Good to know.
In terms of just response and respect for each other was incredible.
Great. Thank you.
I love the sparkle. I love the sparkle in her eyes when she was talking about that.
Yeah, you could see
Like
that.
her eyes were just sparkling. It was awesome.
Totally. Anybody else want to make a comment before we get started?
Well, it's the heart-centeredness of this company. And I think the messaging of being positive and really looking for the future. And yeah.
Great.
Good.
All right. Well, we're going to get started because we need to, because we've got some stuff to cover. First of all, this is the book that I am using right here. You can see it, the 4 Agreements. And I'll give you a little bit of a backstory of the 4 Agreements. Both Chris and I have always been what we call, personal growth junkies, self-help books forever, as long as I can remember. And we were on a family vacation with my parents and my sister and her family. And my father came up to Chris, and Chris was reading this book, and he said, or he might not have been reading this book. He was reading another book, a self-help kind of personal growth book. And my dad says, geez, do you read every one of those that comes out? And Chris said, yeah, kind of think so. And my dad says, you know what I would do if I were you? I'd pick one and just do everything it says. Because really, you all are nodding on this one. All of us have read the books and go, yeah, but what do we put into action? And this book has only 4 things you need to put into action to change your life. And both Chris and I dedicated ourselves to doing this book. And I just think it's one of the most powerful books I've ever read or really used. So the premise of the book is the fact that as we grow up, and there's no personal growth course that won't say this, this is based on Toltec wisdom, thousands of years old of Toltec wisdom. And all the courses you take will be saying the same thing. What is it? Between the ages of 2 and 7, or birth and 7 approximately, we are just little recorders. We record everything that's happening. We don't, whatever our parents tell us, whatever our teachers tell us, we just assume that that's the reality of the world. And we typically take on the beliefs of everybody around us. Would most of you agree with that one?
Yes.
Anybody that finds a hard time believing that, because, your parents teach you and they're teaching you from the beliefs that they inherited. And those people are teaching you from the beliefs they've inherited. And so when do you, at what point, what wing decide that those beliefs that have been shared with you are beliefs that you agreed upon when you were a young child, but they may not be serving you now? Has anybody had that reality shake them up a little bit anywhere in your lives, that those beliefs may not serve you today? And so it made so much sense to me. And so there's only 4 agreements. And I think that it's really important to think about, gee, what agreements did my parents tell me? Maybe your parents believed that, people that were too tall were stupid, or people that lived in certain parts of the country were not smart enough, or whatever it is. But you go back and you think, you just took those beliefs right on until one day you went, well, I'll give you an example of a belief that I took on from my family. Is my father was a very, very generous, philanthropic, affectionate dad. I could not have asked for a better dad, but the one place he was just not his best self was when he was dealing with clerks or anybody behind the counter, or when he was purchasing something and it didn't go his way, or we would go into a hotel and he wouldn't get the room he wanted. And rather than going back calmly saying, gee, this doesn't work, can we have such and such a room? He would go right into yelling. And in my 20s, I was with some friends and I went into a store and I bought a t-shirt. I'll never forget this, it was in San Francisco. And there was a big sign that says all return final, no exceptions. And I bought this t-shirt and I got outside and I realized I bought the wrong size. And so I said, oh God, now I'm gonna have to go back in to get this shirt exchanged. And my sentence was, and I'm gonna have to yell at somebody. And my friend said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know how people behind the counter, you yell at them to get what you want. She said, what are you talking about? I had grown up with my father doing this. And she walked in, very nicely said, you know, we just bought this, blah, blah, blah. And the woman said, okay, fine, and gave me the right t-shirt. And for me, it was astounding because I'd never seen anybody do that calmly. So it was an agreement that I took on that that's what you're supposed to do. Anybody else, you don't have to tell them, but anybody else think of in the moment of an agreement that you took on from your parents that you've given up now because you realize, not a good agreement, right? Okay. And I know your family, Carrie, I know some of the agreements that they had that you really had to shift, you know, like some families really believe with all their heart that boys are better than girls. And if you're a girl in a boy family, you're in trouble. And you grew up believing that you are not worthy. So that's a belief that does not serve you later in life. So that's one example. So the first agreement, so the idea here is to number one, how do we get rid of our old agreements? And what agreements do we take on that are new that will serve us? And I think these four apply to any area of your life where you've taken on agreement that has not served you and is continuing to not, or maybe served you as a child because you agreed with your mom, your dad, your teacher, and you got rewarded for it. And if you didn't agree with them, you got in trouble, right? So the first one is to be impeccable with your word. And what does that mean to be impeccable with your word? So number one, our word creates our world. So when we are using words that are really negative in nature, it doesn't really serve us. And I'll give you the most important piece about that is that how many of you, and I'm already raising my hand, do some negative self-talk. You lose something, you can't find it. And the first thing you kind of say to yourself is, well, that was stupid, or I'm stupid, or I can't believe I did that. When am I going to not do that anymore? Or whatever it is that those words are that we say over and over and over again to ourselves. Or how many had a parent, this did happen to me, who told you you didn't have a very good voice. Like, so singing was not something you did because you didn't have a very good voice. They weren't mean about it. Maybe you really didn't have one, but as soon as you heard that, what did you do? You stopped singing, right? So, so being impeccable with your word, but the number one place, and by the way, the word impeccable, I think from the Bible, from the, you know, ancient, what's the first Bible called? The old Bible. I don't know what it is.
Scrolls.
What?
Scrolls.
The
So,
Old Testament.
The Old Testament, thank you, that was the word I was looking for.
Oh.
Talked about a sin is when you talk against yourself. And if you think about that, if you believe in God or any kind of higher power or the universe having your back, the universe, God does not want you to talk bad about yourself because we are all children of God, for example. So why would you be talking bad about yourself? That's just one of the many ideas. So, and being impeccable word, and the word impeccable means to sin against. So when you are talking unkindly to yourself, you're actually sinning against yourself. And when I read that for the first time, that was just absolutely stunning to me. So, so I just want you to think about, how often during the day are you committing this sin against yourself and taking away your own power and your own possible divine creation? Okay, so that's the first one, be impeccable with your word. And by the way, there's so much more in here that I can't go into that he just describes. I forgot as I was reviewing it, I went, oh, no wonder I love this book. It's much more than just what I'm saying here. So I'm really going to encourage you. It's a short, easy book to read. And I'm going to encourage you to really take it on yourself. The second one, which, you know, when I think about being impeccable with your word, it doesn't sound like a very hard thing to do. But when I think about the negative self-talk that I do on and off during the day, apparently it's harder than I thought it was to be impeccable with our word. Number two, don't take anything personally. How many of you guys struggle with taking things personally?
Yeah.
Most people do. I've gotten pretty good about it. Now, here's the idea about that. And he means anything. Don't take anything personally. So he gives the example of the man that wrote the book is Miguel Ruiz, R-U-I-Z. And he says, if somebody says to me, you know, you really did a great job last night. He says, I don't take that personally. He says, and if somebody says you did a really bad job last night, he says, I don't take that personally. Because every judgment that someone has about you is coming from the agreements that they made when they were a child, or even now, but their agreements may not be the same values that you hold. So now you are listening to somebody who doesn't have the same values as you do. If being honest and kind are your values, and their values are being tough and direct, and they come at you, they're coming at you through their, you know, their different colored lenses. You've heard that expression before. If you're wearing a different colored lens, the world looks differently to you. So it's all coming through their filter. So let's say somebody completely values people being really, really, really skinny, like Twiggy, like, you know, just, we're talking skinny here. We're not talking trim and fit. And so you now are actually trim and fit, and they come up to you and say, well, it looks like you need to lose a little weight. And you get in front of the mirror and you think, gosh, do I need to lose a little weight? It's coming through their perspective. You need to decide first what your values are compared to yours. And when you take things personally, guess who suffers? You take the suffering for someone else's opinion that may have completely different values than you do. Somebody values being super, super thin as being healthy, and you weigh a few more pounds than that, and they are now telling you that you're going to be sick and whatever. Okay. Or somebody says to me, gee, you know, I really like your hair so much better when it's straight. You know, because sometimes I straighten my hair, right? And they think that, well, I really like your hair better that way. It doesn't mean that it looks better. It means that that's what they value. Especially you'll find that people that compliment you on certain things, like when I wear my hair straight, the people that compliment me on straight hair are people that have straight hair. And the people that tell me they really like my hair curly are typically the people that have curly hair. It's really interesting. So it comes from their perception. So not taking anything personally. This next one might be my favorite because I have a really great story about that. And it's don't make any assumptions. It could also mean don't make up any stories. And everything we do in life, we make up a story for it. Everything. There's nothing we don't make up a story for. And if you're not aware of it, start paying attention to yourself. Somebody looks at you odd. They kind of look at you strange, and all of a sudden you're thinking, is my hair weird? Is there something out of place? Did I do something to annoy them? It's a story that your mind makes up because your brain cannot stand it can't stand the unknown. So when you run up against something that you're not clear on, your brain makes up a story about it. And my big experience around that was years and years ago. And you all are allowed to use my conclusion in your own lives, should you want to. But I had a friend, she wasn't a close friend, but she had a daughter the same age as my younger daughter. And we took turns babysitting each other's kids. When somebody wanted to go shopping, we just call up and say, hey, Kathy, can I drop Brittany off? And she'd call me up and say, and we weren't good friends, but we liked each other and we liked each other's kids. And it was a very easy, convenient relationship that we both got value out of. And then she stopped calling me and she stopped returning my calls when I'd say, can Brittany come over and play? And I made an assumption, or I made up a story. And the story went like this. I must have done something to offend her or something, and now she's not returning my calls. And I lived with that story. I said, I just thought, well, she doesn't like us anymore. And Brittany would say, can't we go over there? And I'd say, not today. I, was making up stories to my daughter. And it was really about me thinking she just didn't like me anymore. Well, a couple of months into that, we both found ourselves at a funeral of somebody that we both knew. And, that's the place where your heart cracks open just a little bit up. And I went up to her and I said, hey, Kathy, I said, I got to ask you a question. I said, did I do something to offend you? Did I do something? Because it feels like, you're avoiding me and, I feel funny calling and asking about Britt or anything. Her mouth about hit the floor. And she said, yeah, she said, no, that's not it. She goes, and I wonder who else is saying that about me. And I'm thinking, what happened? Her mother had passed away 2 months ago and she went into a major depression. I made up a story all about me. She doesn't like me. Like I'm so self-important that the story has to be about me. Had I asked her 2 or 3 months before, there might have been something I could have done. But I just let it go because I stuck to my story that she no longer liked me. So I decided from that moment on, if I were going to make up a story, which I'm going to guarantee to you right now, you probably already did it sometime today, it was going to be a good story. I was going to make it a good story, unless I was going to ask the person, unless I was going to go find out the truth. So I'll give you another example. When my kids would come home from school and I'd say, how was your day? And they'd say, fine, but Mary was really mean to me. What happened? Well, she walked right by me and I said hi to her, hello, and she just didn't say anything to me. So the story my daughters made up was Mary is mean. And I said, is it possible Mary didn't see you? Is it possible that her parents just told her that, her father was going away on a long trip and he wouldn't be home anymore for a while? Is it possible that her dog died this morning? Is it possible she's mean? I could have gone on with the stories that we made up, but I said to my daughter, you get to choose your story. And it may not be that she's mean. Maybe there's a backstory that you don't know about. And maybe you can ask Mary. And maybe you'll say, yeah, because I just don't like you. And then you'll know and you'll stay away from Mary. But I decided that when people would look at me funny, like I started this out with to begin with, they kind of look and, wondering, is there something in my teeth? Do I, have lipstick on my teeth? Am I wearing something weird? I decided that no matter how anybody ever looked at me, that this is what they were thinking. They were thinking that I, Nikki, am really hot. No matter who looked at me, no matter how they looked at me, it was that I'm hot. And I practiced it. So it didn't matter who looked at me. Didn't matter if it was a woman or man or an old 90-year-old man or a 5-year-old kid. If they looked at me, they were thinking I'm hot. And I practiced it so much. I mean, really, that it was no longer practice. Somebody looked at me and I just think, they probably think I'm hot. It just became natural for me. And I will tell you that when I realized that I had gotten so good at thinking that, as I was in my car, I was in my late 40s, early 50s, my daughter was driving. There was a guy in a car next to us driving and he kept looking over and he was really good looking. And he kept looking over and I'm thinking, what am I thinking, you guys?
You think you're hot.
I'm hot. And we get up to a stop sign and I look over expecting him to look at me and just, give me this great big smile. And I see him lean way forward to look around me, to look at my daughter.
Yeah.
He wasn't thinking about me for 1 second. But I'm going to tell you that whole drive, that half a mile down this street, I was feeling pretty good. I'm hot. So I would challenge you. It doesn't have to be that, but if you're going to make up something, make it be something good. Make it be something that makes you feel good. Fourth agreement is always do your best. And that doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. Let's get that perfectly clear because there is no such thing as perfect. And I think it's Brene Brown that says, even when we do make a mistake, even when we say something that offends to somebody, it means that we have a chance to do it better the next time. So what comes with do your best is being aware of your surroundings, remembering who you are, that you can be kind, that you can be compassionate, that you can be acknowledging. And I love, Donna, that that's what you felt at this whole conference. People were being their best. And you got to feel the best side of that. So those are the 4 agreements. And I'm just going to stop there and see if there's any comments. And there is so much more in this book than just the little bit that I mentioned. But is there anybody else that has read this book and taken it to heart? Carrie.
Yep. Yeah, I've read it and I think it's good to just reread, to go back through it. I mean, honestly, the elements of the 4 elements of that book are so simple, and yet, you know, to keep focused on that throughout our day, even in the midst of challenges or challenging situations.
Yeah.
If you really think about that, not taking anything personal. I mean, being able to let that go.
So think about, a lot of people have a hard time making calls and inviting people to watch videos or, you know, or come to an event or say yes to taking Juice Plus. And when they say no to you and say, no, I'm not going to watch that stupid video you sent me. How many of you take that personally? Does it feel like you've been kind of punched in the gut a little bit? It has nothing to do with you. 0. It's their perspective. And if you can remember that, it makes it a lot easier to do this business and invite people, you know? So anybody else? Kirsten, I think you've read the book, right?
I have not read the book, but I feel like I have, because both you and Chris have imparted so many of these. I mean, it's just part of your DNA, I feel. So you've put it out so much.
Good.
But I want to just say something for the not taking things personally, because I think if there's anything that's potentially taken me out in this business, it's that. And to the point of this book, and one of my huge takeaways from conference, because I heard it over and over and over again, is not taking it personally when team members drop out.
Yeah.
I take so much pride and invest so much in my teams. And I feel like the first few big, you know, ones that became really good friends and quit the business, I beat myself up so badly over it.
Yeah.
And what did I do wrong? And how could I have been a better leader and all these things? And, you know, I think it was who's that young Victoria,
Yes.
just saying, get over yourself. If you've got 50% of the same team you started with, you're doing well.
Yeah.
And, you know, she was just so matter of fact and upfront. And it really speaks to this, that's still where I have a lot of work to do, but it's just so good to revisit it over and over and over. So
I cannot encourage you enough to actually read it, because as I reviewed it, I had totally forgotten the whole Toltec part and the religious part. And he brings in, you know, all kinds of perspectives historically and via spiritual or religion, where he quotes the Bible and he quotes the Toltec people and he quotes, and it's really brings it home. Here's a sentence. It says, as you make a habit of not taking anything personally, you won't need to place your trust in what others do or say. You know how powerful that is, to not give yourself away like that? You have a different kind of faith, right? Faith in the divine. You're part of the divine, you know? So, so anyway, that was one in it. It says, there's just so much more in this book. It's so rich. I'd forgotten how rich it was. All I thought about was the 4 agreements. I forgot about all the other pieces to it. Anybody else?
Nikki, I was just going to say, I read it years ago and I used it at work with my staff, and each of them read it. And one of the big tenets in the school was be impeccable with your word.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I once told this to a 6th grade teacher, and she started out every year with this book. They didn't read the book, but she started out with the 4 agreements first day of school with all of her kids, which I thought was amazing to start young. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, my challenge for this, whatever, is to go ahead, get this little paper back. You can see all the pink places where I've marked it and tagged it, and underlined it and whatever. And when I re-looked at it just in the last few days, I was shocked at what I didn't remember. It's just so much more powerful than even those 4 pieces. But it's simple, but it's not easy to not take things personally, right? So with that said, tomorrow night is our welcome call. If you have any brand new partners since the end of March, right? We're in April. The end of March till now, if you have any new distributors on your team, please invite them to the call tomorrow night and let me know who you're coming on with so that we can welcome them. And if you don't have anybody, but you would like to support the team and have them just see who we are, that we are this incredible team that shares love, come and join us tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Same channel that we're on right now, and it goes from 6 to 6:30. So we're good. All right. Can't think of anything else in the moment. This will be posted on boards under JP University. It's also on our Heat YouTube channel. And everybody have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you. Hope you do.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for such a
you.
great conference. So great
Oh,
to
yeah, we could stay on
be
top of
in-
that all night.